Good morning. Today is the 26th day of Sivan, the 15th of June, and we're learning this short essay. It's not even an essay, it's more like it's almost like a footnote. It's all the details very, very quickly jotted down in short order. So we saw yesterday this whole idea that the reason that they had the Levites in the temple was to awaken the emotions. And they did it through song. We said that they also had a job to guard, but the most important thing was the song that they sang as the service was going on, and that is what awakened the love and the fear. And they even say here simcha, even though simcha is not a midah, it's not usually one of the emotions. It's a general. It's what gives birth to all the emotions. Because the simcha is bina, is understanding. It's the ima, it's the mother, from where all the emotions originate. So that's what the Levite does. And when there's an awakening from below, there's also an awakening from above. Like we just said. And in our day, how do you do this? So you can sing. It's a very good thing to sing, but you sing before you meditate, before you contemplate. Yidbunenut is the Hasidic form of contemplation, and there's a lot written about that. But here we're in the early stages of defining these words. So all he says is it's bina. It's just understanding. That's all we need to understand it. It means that the person is holding the concepts that he learned strongly in his mind, and he's analyzing them, and he's expanding them. That's the Yidbunenut. And then, when there's an expansion, there is excitement, there is joy. Meaning, if all I do is I just contemplate what I learned and I don't add to it anything, then there's no joy in it. And when there's no joy, there's no excitation. With no excitation, no new emotions are begotten from this act. And you have to have something that you add. It's very important that when you learn, there has to be a chiddush. There has to be something that you added. That is what causes joy to come. And so a person who just repeats all the time what he learned, but he doesn't sit and contemplate and does itbonenus, which means that it expands in his mind. If it doesn't expand in your mind, then there's no excitation there's no giving birth to new emotions. So all this is the Levite. אבל בחינת כהן הוא בחינת חוכמה למעלה מן המידות. But the Kohen, he represents something entirely different. The priest represents that which is wisdom, which is above the emotions. In other words, the emotions give a person a feeling of excitement and so on, but they immediately fall under the guise of what we call being, state of being. The person feels himself. Because when you have emotions, when you're excited, you feel yourself. And there's a big question about whether you can serve God that way. And the priest, who is supposed to be the one who's conducting the service itself, so he doesn't have emotion. In fact, he's, as we'll see, is very quiet. They walk quietly. They walk without noise. What does it mean they walk quietly without noise? That's one option, maybe. But a lot of people didn't make noise with their shoes back then because there was no, the shoes were made differently. The point is that he doesn't make a ruckus about himself. He's not, when a person is nullified, he doesn't make any noise. It's like what we call blending in. So like if you've got a sniper who needs to find the spot in the jungle, and so nobody can see him. So he has to blend in such a way that he makes no noise. He's nothing. It's like he's not there. He doesn't exist. That's what we mean by he doesn't make any noise.
But the Kohen Gadol had bells in his coat.
That's something else. He's something else. He's something completely different. But the regular priest, he signifies the state of not making any noises, we'll see. So the Kohen, he's the wisdom. So he was at the Levi is the left side, the Bina, the understanding. The Kohen, he represents the right side. And the right side, the Chokhmah, is above the emotions, above the midos. שהמידות אינן ממדרגות ein od, because they can't exist in a place where all you feel is that there's only the existence of God. There's no room for emotions. There's no room for excitation when a person is completely immersed in the experience of there being only God and nothing else. Ein od. אבל כשרואה אין עוד מלבדו, והכל בטל במציאות באמת, ואין מי לאהוב או ליראה או שערי מידות, וזהו כהנא ברעותא דליבא שלמעלה מן המידות. So he has to reach a state of there's nothing but him, nothing but God. That's the Kohen, the priest. He has to reach this state. And everything is what we call batel b'metziut. The being of everything is nullified. Not just the ego, not just the sense of self. That's bitul yesh. We were saying batel b'metziut. It's like it doesn't exist at all. There's nothing else there. And there's no one to love or no one to fear, meaning the person feels about himself. There's no one here that's loving God. There's no one here who's fearing God. There's none of this. There's nothing left from all my emotions. They're gone. They're completely gone. Like I'm nothing. I don't exist at all. Again, it's not I don't exist at all. Here I am. What I mean is that there is only the experience. There's no one having the experience. There's only the fear of God. There's only the love of God. There's no one here inside. It's not me who has the love, who has the fear. I don't feel it. I don't recognize it. I don't identify it as myself. And when does a person reach a state like this? Bitul b'metziut. When do you reach that state?
I've never reached this.
Of course you have.
I go to sleep.
That's one option. Okay. If your wife yells at you, and you don't want to answer, you don't want to get angry, you don't want anything. So what do? So now I'm not here. Anybody who yells at me, I'm not here. So does it mean I can't hear? I hear what's being said. I understand it, but there's no emotions coming up. There's nothing because that's it. It's not me. And even if I need to show emotion, I don't identify with the emotion. I have to show emotion to show that, yes, I take it seriously, but there's nothing here. There's no one here at all. And it's the only way to stand in a state where you don't want to push someone away. On the other hand, you don't want to get excited by what they're saying. So in a certain sense, you're not here. When it comes to the temple, it was much, much stronger than that, because it's not just that I'm not here, but the moment that I'm not here, then who's here? Hashem is here. Everything is like a state here of, wow, this is a very intense experience. But I'm not aside in this experience. It's just the experience itself. And it's always written in Chasidut that the danger of every experience is that the person is taken in by what they feel. What they feel, what they mean is not that there's love or fear or whatever there is. What they mean is that they feel themselves. That they say, wow, I'm having this tremendous experience. I must be a really chashuv person. Must be a really important person to be able to have such an experience. He says, no, you're just a placeholder for where this experience is happening. It's not you at all. It has nothing to do with you. So that is what the priest gives. And that's what it means. So the Kohen, he reaches up to what we call the inner sanctum of the heart. And he reaches, we talked about this, maybe we didn't talk about it, I talked about it last week, about 2 weeks ago with Parashat Naso. The Naso is also to raise the person into the realm of the crown. And where does that reveal itself? It reveals itself in the heart. It doesn't reveal itself above. It reveals itself in the heart. The heart has this experience, but it's not an experience of self. It's just an experience of the thing in and of itself, the experience of God. It's called the will of the heart. It's like will is always in crown. It's always in keter. And here we have Keter that appears in the heart. It appears here below. And that's exactly what it means, that the heart is now awake. Even though I'm not a side here. I'm not. It's not specifically because of me. The heart is awakened with what is beyond. And that's why we say that wisdom is a safeguard. Sorry, the safeguard. The wisdom is silence. What do you mean here silence? Well, we said before that the Kohen, he walks silently. You don't hear him. So the safeguard to wisdom, how do I know that somebody is wise? That they're silent. What do I mean by silent? It doesn't mean that they don't open their mouth. It could be saying many, many things, but they're not speaking about themselves. It's not the self that's coming out. And this we talked about many times with relation to the Baal Shem Tov, that his whole shita, his whole process that he called submission, separation, sweetening, was in order to teach the Rebbes how to speak without feeling themselves, without it being an expression of the self, but rather that the words that come out should be words from a higher source. They're not coming from their experience of themselves. Whenever we hear somebody talking, and let's say even you hear somebody let's say you read a book, any book, fiction. So whatever's coming out from the writer's whatever's coming out from the writer's words has to be by definition something that they experienced, because everybody writes from experience. To be able to write, to be able to express yourself not from your experience, you have to remove yourself from the equation. And so there's people who do this we've given the criticism already. I'll give it again because I can't give it enough. There's all this stuff that people do, like I'm going to speak automatically, I'm going to write automatically, that somehow that's supposed to be that you're not involved. You've never done these things unless you've worked in the government, which you have, so maybe you have written automatically. Writing automatically means that you write whatever comes to mind without thinking about it. And people do this. They try to get their creative juices flowing. The whole thing. And in Christianity, they have this thing called speaking in tongues, which is a nonsense. So they say blah, 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 just blubbering. And supposedly it's different languages and different nonsense. It's all shtus. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact that the person is silent in the sense that his self does not come out, but he's speaking things that are very true. How does he do that? So usually the way it's done is that first you prepare what you want to say, and then you do the nullification of the self, and then you speak. So what you prepared is true because you learned it before, but you don't want yourself to be a party to this. You don't want it to be dependent on you, on your own feelings. It's not your own feelings that are supposed to come out. Something greater is supposed to affect those who are listening. So that's called the silence. But song is obviously the greatest voice, right? It's the most beautiful voice, the song. So the Levites, they speak. They don't just speak; they sing. So their song is the most pronounced in terms of creating emotion, whereas the priest, he's completely silent. There's no sense of self. This was the problem with in Samuel, that the children of Eli took part of the portions that they weren't supposed to take from the sacrifices. And not only there was a part of the portions, but the sages say it was even worse than that. That when a woman came to bring a sacrifice, for instance, she had just given birth, and people then were very, very afraid that if they didn't do this, then who knows what would happen to them. So they would take advantage of that. They said, if you want me to fit you in today, because there was a lot of Jews, so you want me to fit you in today to bring your two birds today, then come with me to my inner chambers and we'll have a short discussion. And that short discussion was exactly what you think it was. And that's what they did. That's what the sages say. That it wasn't just that they took a portion. They took advantage of women there. And so that's the other extreme, right? But in general, the priest is supposed to be like, I'm not here. I'm serving in such a way that my essence is nullified. And I'm only doing the action as a messenger of the person who needs me to bring this sacrifice on the altar. So that, in us, that's our wisdom. And in us, that's our wisdom. We also have understanding, which is our Levite inside of us, but we also have the wisdom, which is our priest inside of us. And when it comes to singing, what he's saying is you can't sing without it awakening the emotions. So by definition, the service of the Levites, which was to sing, is full of being. It has to be. You have to sing from the heart. You can't do it any other way. But it's meant to awaken the emotions. It's meant to awaken the feeling of the self. Okay. So all this is a piece in and of itself. Now he says there was I don't know if he means this here or not. In the Hayom Yom, the verse that we're going to look at now, which we're not going to do today, we'll do tomorrow. The verse that we're going to look at is a verse from Esther, and this was learned in Hayom Yom about coming in to see the Rebbe. But the first time somebody would come for a yechidus, for a private audience with the Alter Rebbe, so they would perform this. And the pasuk was Shisha chodashim b'shemen hamor, v'shisha chodashim babsamim. 6 months in balsam oil, and 6 months in spices. And so what does the balsam oil represent? What do the spices represent? So you can immediately understand that he's going to talk again about wisdom and understanding, about the priest and the Levite. So the priest, he's the balsam oil. Oil in general is always wisdom. And 6 months in the spices, that is already the Levite. It's bringing out the emotions. So there was a whole process. They waited for a year before they went into to see the Alter Rebbe. So it could be that they learned it from what he's going to say now in the next 2 paragraphs. It could be that he explained this afterwards because he saw that people were. But I'm guessing that he said this first, and then the Hasidim understood that what this means is you should wait a year and you should do this for 6 months and this for 6 months, and we'll look at the Yom Yom also to understand it, because it's almost the same thing. He's almost saying the same thing exactly. So you have to be first nullified, and then you have to bring out the emotions in the right way, the attributes in the right way, in order to gain the most from the first private audience you have with the Alter Rebbe. See this tomorrow. Well, you're gonna be zoche. That's the entire point. When you learn this, you're now preparing for the yechidus.
Right.